Hey, it's Jackie here from the Early Years Learning Hub. And before we get started, I wanted to let you know about our subscription option. If you're a fan of our podcasts and would like to see us continue to bring you interesting speakers on all of the topics you didn't even know you needed to hear about, as well as accessing some really great resources to help you put some of the ideas from the podcast into practice, then why not subscribe? It is great value at just $2.99 plus GST per month and is automatically debited from your bank account. Simply go to our website, Early Years Learning Hub, and click on the subscribe button. Welcome to another Early Years Learning Hub podcast. My name is Jackie Ward and I'm the founder and managing director of the Early Years Learning Hub. This episode is one of our practice. Welcome to another Early Years Learning Hub podcast. My name is Jackie Ward and I'm the founder and managing director of the Early Years Learning Hub. This episode is one of our practice sharing series where I invite teachers, educators and leaders to share their practice and tell us about some of their practices that work for them. Today, I'm joined by Ebony Birch-Hanger, Neurosensory Education Specialist, and we will be discussing how understanding neurosensory systems support teachers and educators to better support children to self-regulate. This is the second episode of a 4-part series, and in this episode, we will be unpacking the nervous system and how it influences children's behaviour. Ebony, would you like to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your professional journey?
Absolutely. So I started training as I trained originally as an early childhood educator and primary teacher. But when I was a child myself, I found that I was always very drawn to individuals who didn't quite fit the mold, individuals who interacted with the world differently from the majority. And I found that even from a very early age, I was able to relate to and guide those individuals quite easily. When I started working in childcares, kinders and primary schools, I quickly realised that I couldn't support the children I wanted to in the way that I wanted to within the systems and resources that were available in those settings. So I opened my own education and therapy centre and ran individual and group programs with individuals from toddlers right through to senior age and with a wide variety of diagnoses, medical conditions and complex communication and behavioural profiles. Over the years, I did additional training in special ed, deaf ed and neurodevelopmental therapy. And it was then through running my own social and emotional, music and movement, speech and language, auditory training and full educational programs at my centre that I refined my beliefs, my values, and the processes that I used. And that forms the basis of the approach that I use and teach today.
That's awesome. A very interesting and varied career so far, which is
Absolutely.
amazing. So I'll just give our listeners a little, if anyone hasn't listened to the first one, we talked sort of about working out the why and the overarching kind of ideas and unpacked the 3 pillars. And the neurosystem was one of them, one of those pillars that we would need to have a think about. So when you say neurosystem, can you explain to our listeners exactly what you're referring to in this context?
So the nervous system is the first.
Nervous system. Sorry, that was my
That's
bad.
okay. Lots of neuro and neuro nerves. It's all merges into one, really. So the nervous system is always the first pillar that I look at, or the first aspect I look at. Now, the nervous system has multiple components and branches. Don't worry, I'm not giving you a science lesson today. But all of the branches are relevant to my workout why framework and approach. So for our purposes today, I'm referring to the brainstem, limbic system, which is our emotional center, and the autonomic nervous system. Now, those 3 components are responsible for detecting and responding to safety or threat. And the autonomic nervous system responds in a predictive model. So they're the key aspects I'm focusing on when I'm thinking about the nervous system.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. And again, I am learning a lot here, thinking about those, I guess, more sort of basic kind of parts of the brain and how they work. Would that be right in saying that? Like more sort of automated kind of processes, I guess, or systems?
Yeah. So we're looking at very, primitive responses.
Yep.
From the brain. Yeah. Very primitive.
Awesome. Okay, so what are the main autonomic roles of the autonomic system? So you talked a little bit about, those systems there. So firstly, the neurosystem detects safety or threat, and secondly, that it responds in a predictive model. So, can you sort of shed some light on those two sort of parts of that statement?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the brainstem and limbic system that are detecting threats. So they are constantly scanning the environment for cues of safety or danger. And then our autonomic nervous system responds. And our autonomic nervous system has one job only, which is to keep us safe.
Hmm.
And so these cues of safety or danger, they can come from inside the child's body, they can come from outside their body, so in the environment, and they can come from in between the person the child is interacting with. So, say the educator and the child, for example. So, danger, when I say danger as well, I want to point out that I don't mean literal danger. There may not be any literal danger in the environment, but the child's nervous system is detecting threat for some reason, detecting that they don't feel safe. And so when we're looking at detecting threat, that's what we're talking about. The brainstem and the limbic system detecting the threat, and then the autonomic nervous system responding related to those cues that they're receiving from those three places: inside their body, outside in the environment, and in between the educator and the child. Now, the reason that I think this is really important for educators to understand is because it's those cues of safety or threat that the child receives that are determining how a child is going to respond in each given moment. And those cues register subconsciously. And felt safety is subjective. So the reason this is really important is because it's not always obvious why a child is displaying a certain behavior. And we may be thinking, but there's nothing unsafe here. There's nothing in this environment that could have triggered them or upset them. There's no danger. But for the child's nervous system, their nervous system has subconsciously picked something up in the environment. And that's the reason the child is responding the way that they are. We as the adult feel perfectly safe, but the child's nervous system does not feel safe in that particular moment.
So interesting that you say that, because I was thinking exactly that. How many times have I myself or heard other people say, but nothing happened, like it was just so random, so out of the blue. But as you said, there could be, some traumatic experiences that child has had quite a long time ago that you know nothing about, that is, creating this kind of circuit, isn't it? Where you don't necessarily realize it. So
Absolutely. And that's that second element, is the fact that the nervous system responds in a predictive model. So because it has one job, which is to keep us safe, the most efficient way for it to do its job is to respond through a predictive model. And the nervous system registers prior experiences, including the cues of safety or threat that that child received in that prior experience, and then how that situation played out. So again, why this is important for educators to understand is that we need to remember that whole process is subconscious. Even the child themselves is not aware of what their nervous system has registered. The child isn't actually planning their responses. The nervous system is deciding how that child is responding in that particular moment. And the nervous system may not be responding to the current situation. It may be responding based on memories of a past situation or environment that was similar.
So in all likelihood, it could probably be a surprise as to why that happened, couldn't it?
It can be, yeah.
Yeah. So there's no particular reason. And not that I think this is appropriate anyway, but, often it's kind of a knee-jerk thing. Why did you do that? A child isn't going to be able to answer that, are they? They're not going to be able to answer it normally anyway, because why questions are pretty hard for little people. But, yeah, if they don't even know why it happened, they're not going to be able to respond in that way, are they?
No, they're just responding based on what they're feeling in their body. So, that the brainstem and the limbic system, they're detecting threat for some reason, probably based on a predictive model, past experience, and their autonomic nervous system then makes the decision about how they respond. So often children, they're feeling whatever they're feeling in their body, and they don't know why their body is feeling that way. So it's hard for them too, because they're feeling all these big things in their body and they don't understand why, because it's not their choice.
Yeah.
So, when when we realize that as educators, I always find it's just like this, it's a light
Yeah.
bulb moment. Now it makes so much more sense as to why we sometimes see these big behaviors when we couldn't see anything that would have.
What was happening, yeah, and
Yeah.
it really also draws home a really good point, which I always say, one of the things that we need to do when we're, experiencing children with some challenging behaviours is look at a lot of things that are happening in that space and what was the antecedent to that or the precedent to that and, who was where and what was the noise level like, what was all of these what were all those different things like to know what might have been causing that particular trigger. Awesome. So I'm sure our listeners are now like, okay, that's really awesome. But what are some practical strategies they could implement in their classrooms tomorrow and in environments? Can you share some of your hot tips about that?
Yeah. So look, based on what we've just spoken about, it can be challenging. It can be difficult because we're not in control of the nervous system. So
Mm,
we can't actually change the past. We
yeah.
can't change why the nervous system is responding in the way that it is. But what can we do? And the biggest thing that we can do as educators, the most important thing is to regulate ourselves. Because remember, I mentioned that cues of safety or threat also occur in between the educator and the child, or
Mm,
between the educator and the child. So if we regulate ourselves, that allows us or our nervous system to start sending cues of safety to the child. So it doesn't matter why the child is responding the way they are, doesn't matter what state their nervous system is in, if we can regulate ourselves, that will start automatically sending cues of safety to that child. So a few really quick, easy, practical things to do. And most educators, when you think about it, and I encourage the listeners next time you're in this situation to just monitor yourself and think, oh, am I doing these things? You're likely clenching your jaw.
mm,
You've probably got your shoulders up and they're tense. Yeah. And you're probably breathing really shallowly into your chest because that's our nervous system naturally responding to a challenging situation. So they're the first three things you can do. Notice, unclench your jaw, just give it a bit of a wiggle, relax your shoulders, drop your shoulders, and a deep breath into your belly. Those three things will make a world of difference to the signal that is being sent to the child in that moment of dysregulation.
mm. Do you mind if I jump in there, Ebony? Because
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to the saucepan on the head with the big child with the big,
Yeah.
I was like, my initial reaction was kind of like, as I think a lot of people are when another child is hurt and it's your job to look after all the children. I was sort of
Yeah.
like, it literally went like that. I was angry. I was like, and then I had to go, hang on a minute, it's not like that child. It's not like any of our children are like hell bent on hurting other people on purpose. And I could as soon as I could see that little other child sort of with that sort of remorse on their face and that feeling bad about themselves to do that. And it was exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
I did do some breaths. I did calm down. I got down to, I had both of them. I was hugging both of them, and talking to this one, was she okay? And, with the ice pack once I had that on and, but definitely I think your response, and he would have definitely picked up some of his response was probably definitely in to my response
Mhm.
of being angry faced and, jaw clenched and all of those sorts of things. So, yeah, I think it's about getting control of yourself as well and remembering that you're the adult in this situation and your job is to help co-regulate as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and so once you've done those three things, unclenched your jaw, relax the shoulders, deep breath into your belly, there are a couple of other things you can do, and that's thinking about what could be contributing to the feeling of not safe that the child
Mm,
is experiencing at the moment. And so we want to look at those areas I mentioned before of where they're getting the cues from, the inside and outside and in between. So if we're looking at inside cues the child may be receiving, we're thinking of things like hunger,
mm,
or thirst or fatigue or pain. So you can automatically, make it part of your process to think, are they hungry? Are they thirsty? Are they just really, really exhausted and overtired? Could they be in pain? Because
mm,
that's then cues that you can do something about to help shift those cues more to feelings of safety rather than threat. When we're looking at the outside, and we're going to dive deeper into this when we talk about the environment, but looking at, what you can adjust in the environment. So providing a safe space, And early childhood educators typically do this really well, providing safe, comforting spaces in the room, providing comfort items, or also possibly removing things from the environment that may be contributing to that feeling of not safe. And then the in-between, so between you and the child, you've already done your unclenching your jaw, you're relaxing your shoulders, your deep breath into your belly, but then continuing to do some long exhales. So you might do a deep breath in,
Oh.
but a long exhale. Long exhales are one of the fastest ways, if not the fastest way, to regulate the nervous system and bring it back
Oh, that's good.
into a position of safety.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I'm guessing that would be something you could do with that other child as well to support them. You'd be doing it together, which
Yeah,
again is that idea of co-regulating together and helping to bring both emotions down.
absolutely.
And yeah, and I love that idea of thinking about those, hunger cues, and because that's again another way for it to teach a child to analyze their own systems to say, well, am I hungry and does that
Yeah,
make me angry? Or am I tired or thirsty or all those sorts of things? That's a great teaching tool as well, isn't it, for that
absolutely.
individual child?
Yeah, for sure.
Love that. Yeah. And again, that idea of, I guess shifting perspectives as well on the idea of, like what else are we going to do? A million years ago in, in education and care services, you would have, given someone time out and got them to sit over in a corner and whatever, which is inappropriate behavior to be doing ever. But also we know better now, so we do better. But that really never taught anyone anything either, did it? Just to go into, told a child that they were sort of being exiled, but didn't teach them anything and helped them in any way to
Yeah.
sort out these feelings of unsafeness or whatever.
No, because it's doing the exact opposite of what we want to do. It's actually sending a message of not safe. You are
Yeah.
not safe right now, and the child's already feeling unsafe. And then by following that practice, we end up with them feeling even more unsafe. So that's the message we would be sending to the nervous system using that approach. So as you say, we know more now. We know better. We do better. And once you understand, which is why today I wanted to give educators that understanding of what's actually happening in the nervous system. It's so important to be aware of that, because then you realize the child is not deciding this for themselves.
Yeah.
It's not conscious. Felt safety is not a conscious experience. It's a subconscious experience. And felt safety is very subjective. So even if we feel safe, the child doesn't. And that's what we need to respond to, because that's the only way that we can help that child to regulate, is to give their nervous system cues of safety. That's the only way.
Well, and I was definitely thinking about the notion of this approach too is much more likely to prevent any future outbursts, particularly for that day, if the child is having all these strategies and is being supported to feel safe, then, instead of the other way where they continue to not feel safe, they're probably going to have lots of other issues and incidents throughout the day, aren't they? Because
Yeah, for sure.
the adults
Yeah.
haven't done anything to change their feelings of safety.
Yeah. So it's, and even when we do, send cues of safety and we respond in the way that we're, speaking about today and that I'm advocating today, it will still take repeated experiences of safety, because if a child's nervous system has a predictive model of unsafe, one experience of safe won't undo that prediction. We need to do it multiple times, but every time we do it, the message gets clearer. And yes, every time we send cues of safety, we are much more likely to have a child that is going to be able to regulate more easily the next time and the next time and the next time.
Because we're changing the prediction,
Yeah.
changing the future. I love it.
Yeah.
I love that idea. And again, I feel like this approach is so much more positive and so much more empowering for an individual educator to see and know that they are going to be helping that child for their whole lives as well, which, like I always think about, especially in early childhood, if we can set children up for success for once they get onto the train that is the formal education system, they're more likely to be experiencing, success throughout that as well. So a nice
Absolutely.
way, I think, to finish off our episode, Ebony. Is there anything else that you've got to add or say on this topic?
No, I think that's probably enough information on the nervous system for the educators. I think It's a big topic, and that's why I only wanted to give just a little insight and just pick out the most important parts. So I
Yes,
hope that,
I agree.
those practical steps we spoke about at the end, that, they are easy things. They're not always easy to do in the moment, but they are simple.
Yes.
And the more you do them, the easier it does become to do them. And so, yeah, I guess just leave on the note of just really encouraging the listeners to just take those practical steps and start practicing them, start implementing them, because the sooner you do, the easier it will come for you to do on a regular
Awesome.
basis.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm also thinking that myself, and particularly with my little person that I've mentioned a few times, I'm thinking all the while, yep, definitely that's some great strategies for me to implement. Well, that has been another episode of the Early Years Learning Hub podcast, and we look forward to speaking to you again in the future, Ebony.
Great. Thanks, Jackie.